Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. Today's show is part of our Law Lovers Lounge. And of course, this is our series where people who love the law, like myself, we love the rule of law, we love the idea that law should provide transparency, equality, justice. And we're having a lounge where we're talking about legal issues, but they're from sort of a broad, relaxed perspective. Just to clarify again, I'm not your lawyer by the fact that you're listening to this show. This is a general discussion of educational topics and issues related to legal issues, but it is not, again, the delivery of legal services to you, the listener. Although, again, I am an attorney, I am not your attorney by virtue of taking part in this program. So, here we are. We're in our Law Lovers Lounge. We love the law. And a lot of what I'm endeavoring to do with this series is to pick the topics that seem to be the most popular with people. And so it might be someone who's come to a speech or shared part of an education program I put forward who asked me a question. But a lot of this, actually, the Law Lovers Lounge, comes from what people ask me about at usually legal clinics. And legal clinics are put on in different communities where people can come in, usually for free, and just sort of sit and chit-chat with the lawyer about whatever their issues are. And so I've taken part in different legal clinics in Texas and in Nevada for years. And many of them are family law based. And that's where I get a lot of my questions that come in the Law Lovers Lounge series that pertain to family law. These are sort of the most popular questions that people in the public have when they come to those law clinics and they try to just get a little bit of legal insight for free that lawyers are doing as part of their community engagement and service to sort of the community at large. So this is a big popular question that comes up all the time when I'm providing community feedback, and it's also something that comes up a lot when I'm doing motivational programs, empowerment programs. A lot of people come and start talking about their personal lives and say that unfortunately it appears that their primary relationship with their spouse is coming to an end, which is just a horrible, sad thing. And this show, of course, our specific topic is, I think that I'm about to be sued for divorce. Now what? I think that I'm about to be sued for divorce. Now what? And so this is a really painful topic. It's, again, one of the more popular ones, and it's one that I think that there's some misconceptions about, misunderstandings, and just people sometimes make decisions that really harm them down the road in terms of the legal outcomes that they would probably be most happy with. So let's just take a few minutes and take a little exploration into this idea of our show topic. You're about to be sued for divorce, or you think you are. Now what? The first thing we want to do is just clarify the laws about marriage are different in different parts of the world, but in general, if someone is legally married to someone, it brings with it a major amount of opportunity and responsibility. So inheritance laws, your ability to sign contracts for your spouse, your ability to actually have ownership over things that your spouse earns or obtains, this is a big, big deal. Marriage is a huge deal legally. And so the idea of an ending marriage, a divorce, is, of course, it's painful, it's sad, and it has a lot of ramifications. So let's take a little bit and chit-chat. The first part of this topic that I think is important to clarify is, if you think that you're about to be sued for divorce, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are, right? It just means that you feel that way. And many people are upset about other things in a relationship. Maybe there's poor communication. Maybe people feel that people have changed, or that people have grown apart, and they start to think, well, I think they're going to divorce me. I think they're going to divorce me. But there's not really any basis in reality. The person actually hasn't filed for divorce. They don't have a lawyer. They're not, planning to file for divorce. It might just be that you need to open up some communication and dialogue with them and see if there's any hope or possibility of figuring out, what's going on with them, how they feel. In other words, just because you think you're going to be sued for divorce doesn't mean you are, and that's actually kind of common, that people kind of jump the gun and feel like, oh no, I think something bad's going to happen. And you might be right, but my argument would be that if you're saying that you think you're going to be divorced or someone's going to, file for divorce, and I just want to be clear that if somebody files for divorce, it is a lawsuit. People sometimes say, well, what lawsuit? And I say the divorce. That's a lawsuit. Obviously it's in court, right? So it's a legal action. It's a lawsuit. And it's one person usually suing the other person for divorce. So it's a suit. That's why I said sued for divorce. What I'm trying to argue is if you really are just frightened about, your emotional connection or, intimacy, emotionally in your relationship, then you don't need to necessarily go talk to a lawyer, but you need to talk to your partner. And I know that sometimes people feel like there's no way they can do that, but, that's probably the best place to start. No matter if you're imagining that things are worse than they are and nobody really is planning to file for divorce, it doesn't hurt you to talk to them. And if you're actually accurate and they really are thinking about it, it's still not going to hurt you to talk to them. So that's my first argument, would be that now, you think you're about to be sued for divorce. Now what? Why don't you talk to the person first and sort of see where they are and what their reaction is. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And we just sometimes in our head can convince ourselves of things they seem totally logical to us. We're in our head, it's like, I just know that's what they're going to do. And it's not that at all. But if you don't talk to anybody, then you're not going to be able to get some good feedback and to determine whether or not you're making reasonable conclusions or you're just absolutely, maybe you're just frightened or maybe, you're just insecure. Nobody knows. So you need to talk to that person. If you say that you can't talk to them because they're living with their new, boyfriend or girlfriend, then that's probably a bad sign. That even if they don't file for divorce, you might want to. So here's, I think, what the biggest thing is as a challenge legally. That people do not think rationally about any of this. And it's really difficult for lawyers, and in fact family law is one of the most difficult areas to practice in. I would argue it's, in terms of sort of a general practitioner, which is what I am, somebody who just handles sort of basic issues, I would say family law is the hardest area to practice in. Not that the rules are more difficult than criminal law or probate or basic real estate, or it's just that people don't make rational decisions, and it's incredibly difficult to take direction from somebody who's your client, which is what you're required to do as a lawyer, when they can't figure out on their own what they want and they're just emotionally a wreck, because they're not making good choices. Then it's hard for them to tell me what to do as a lawyer, and then I'm just not making good legal decisions because I'm getting really bad data from them. And it's because they're just not thinking with anything but their heart. And they're either incredibly angry or they're incredibly frightened or both, and you just get a lack of rationality, and so there's no room in there really to think through that, the reality of the outcomes. If you do get divorced, what is it going to mean to you financially and legally? And so I would ask, in fact, I'm going to beg on behalf of all lawyers, that you take some time, to see if you can talk to the other person. If you can't talk to them, as I said, they've already moved out and they're living with somebody else. They told you that they started a new family with their new partner. These are probably clues that it's not a healthy relationship, especially if they lied about it or pretended it wasn't true. I think the really difficult thing in this, from my perception on the outside, is that people go into, romantic marriages, and you have all of these fantasies and ideas and dreams. And for some people, men and women, it's, been a dream since your childhood. How is it going to be when I'm an adult, and what's my family going to be like? How are we going to live? And people spend so much time on that, and they just have these grandiose ideas. Some people do this even about weddings, right? There's so much emphasis on a wedding. It blows my mind. I talked to somebody the other day who does some event planning and wedding planning on their own in a business, and they were just telling me some of the stories about some of the weddings and some of the behavior, and I just thought, like, why on earth would someone go and go into debt and create all this stress and anxiety and everything over just one day, just one little, basically like a party, like a little short ceremony and then like a party? Why would somebody create all this angst? And it's because it's not about it's not about the marriage at all. It's just about if somebody has in their head, like, this is the most special day of my entire life ever. There's nothing that will happen that's better than this. There's nothing that will be more important than this. There's never going to be another time when people look at me or listen to me or think I'm special or I'm pretty or I'm the center of attention. And every feeling they've ever had of, again, wanting that attention and that accolade and that, that special day, it all was wrapped into this, one little event, and people just act irrationally. And they're not at all thinking about the marriage. They're just so focused on that event. Like, I'm going to get to that day, and I'm going to wear this, and I'm going to be so beautiful, and everyone will pay attention to me, and then I'll get gifts, and, whatever. And they plan all this, and they do all this work to this one little day, but then they don't stop to even do the basics on, is this somebody that's a good investment for, a marriage risk in terms of a relationship? Are we compatible? Do I trust them? Do I know them? Do I even like them? It's amazing how many people, lawyers see who are getting divorced, and the people were never even friends at all. It's just like, wow, no wonder there's no communication. No wonder there's no trust. You were never even friends. You don't even like each other. And of course now when you hate each other and there was nothing there to begin with that was a bond, that was a positive bond, that was deeper than, oh, I thought they were good looking or, they were funny or something, then there's not a lot to salvage, and it's very difficult to get people to communicate. So I would strongly ask that, again, is your thought that you're going to be sued for divorce real based on something that's transpired or some sort of evidence? Or is it all in your head, and when you reach out to talk to your partner about it, they say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, if they say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, but they've been they've disappeared, for 5 days last month, you have no idea where they were, there's weird charges on your credit card to some jewelry store in a hotel. I mean, these are clues. Simultaneously, again, I think the whole core issue with this entire area of family law, and especially divorce, is that people there's such a desire to see what you want to see. And it is a strong and a powerful thing. And it just will take somebody who, in every other metric of their life, makes good choices. I've had people with incredibly, a lot of education, great jobs and income. They've been, quote, successful, in life. But this area blinds them, and they're just not seeing sort of really obvious things. And I think it's because you want to see something else so much. And I would think that aspect of this process is probably something that you need to work on individually, and I would, also suggest counseling. Because that's not a legal problem. And the problem, I think, for a lot of people is they go to lawyers and everything they're talking about is something that's beyond the purview and the scope of what a lawyer can do. I can't, even if a lawyer is also a counselor, like they're also a social worker, they're also a therapist, they're also a psychologist, psychiatrist, I'm not usually wearing both hats at the same time. There's a whole bunch of rules about, professional contracts and services. So I'm usually not going to simultaneously be your psychiatrist and your attorney in your divorce at the same time. It's a conflict of interest. So no matter what the person's expertise is, if you hire them as a lawyer, they can give you legal advice and tell you what the legal outcomes will be and what your options are. But I can't get in there and answer all those other questions. Why don't they love you any longer? Why did they lie to you? How could this happen? Are you unlovable? I can't answer that, and really, honestly, nobody can. But a counselor can help you work through where a lot of that stuff's coming from. A lot of it's childhood and early development life experiences that we're now sort of projecting onto this current situation without just kind of having the ability to remove our feelings and look at what's objectively happening. And that's incredibly difficult. That's why people go to friends and family and people who care about them, and they go to, professionals. That also helps. And it's all you trying to get a sounding board to figure out, what's really going on. Because when your emotions overwhelm you, they overwhelm you. That's the whole problem. It's awesome when it happens, and it's a good thing, right? I'm in love. I'm so excited. It's so great, my emotions. And it's hard when it's the other way because you can't really see what's happening, and you just keep thinking, well, that I like them so much, or I love them, or I feel this, passion for them, and I just can't believe they do that to me. And it's like I've been, I've seen every kind of example you can imagine, where literally the person is there in the courtroom with their new, person that they're cheating on you with, and the person who's my client is still sitting there saying, I think they want to get back together with me. And it's like, I don't know, maybe they do, but clearly they're going to do it with you and this other person that they're already in a relationship with. And it's just sad. And again, I can only give practical legal advice, and I understand the emotional situation is different, but I'm going to beg you to take it really seriously. The incidence of violence in divorces and family law situations around divorce and child custody issues is just incredibly high. It's one of the reasons it's so dangerous to practice as a lawyer, but it's just incredibly dangerous. And this is one of the most dangerous times is when there's going to be a separation. I've seen this with men and women. Had a female client one time at my law firm, literally backed over her husband in the driveway intentionally, trying to kill him. He didn't die. She already had a new boyfriend. She was already pregnant by her new boyfriend while she was still married to him, and he just kept, saying like, she didn't mean it, and he loved her, and I just kept thinking, and I said, as much as I could, she literally just tried to kill you. Like, she's in jail for the criminal charges related to the intentional, backing her car over you in the driveway trying to kill you, and she of course is already dating, and obviously having relationships with someone who she's pregnant by. So I don't, I'm not a fortune teller, but it's not looking good for the relationship. I've had a lot of men actually in that situation where not necessarily where the woman has tried to kill them, but where the woman already has another person she's romantically involved with and or pregnant by, and then the men still say that they're not really sure that she doesn't love them. And I say, well, that's true. I don't, no one will ever know that. That's in the heart of a person. But their behavior is that if they do love you, you're not the only one they love, as they're also having relations intimately with this other person because they're pregnant by them. And those are usually clues that maybe it's time for a reassessment of the relationship. Had it the other way too. I had a woman client, had a younger husband, and the woman had all this real estate and all these rental houses. She was very financially successful and independent. And her younger husband went with one of his new girlfriends and moved into one of her rent houses. So it's her house, she owns it, it's a rental property. There weren't any renters in it, for whatever reason at the time. Her current husband moves in with his girlfriend into her rent house. He's not obviously paying rent. He's just there sort of squatting with his girlfriend, living, I don't know, the good life because they're living for free in her rent house. And then when the wife, who was my client, went over to confront her current husband and his girlfriend in her house, in her rental house, where they're sitting there for free, just living, eating, hanging out, watch TV and everything, she was angry. As you can imagine, remember the emotions of the person, the fantasy you had and that you believed in when you married them. It's not looking good. They've been dishonest. They have a new person that they're also being, intimate with, and to make it worse, this person that her husband was with was living in her rent house with him. It was just, the worst case scenario, right? So she's also, not even getting rent money for that property. So she went over there to confront them, which is a bad idea. We never should do that. And they called the police on her, 911, said she assaulted them and threatened to kill them and all this. And she was arrested on her own property. Totally preventable, but it brings us to, again, our topic. I think I'm about to be sued for divorce. Now what? Option one, I strongly suggest you talk to the person. Try to figure out, are you legitimately concerned they're going to potentially sue you for divorce? Are there things you can work on? Do you need counseling or other, support for your relationship? That's option one. Option two is you need to start being realistic. And what that means is I don't know what it'll happen emotionally, but I can tell you what the outcomes will be in terms of the legal system. So you need to not have any violent contact with them. Violence is not just where you run them over with your car or, strangle them or hit them in the head or whatever. It can also be, these death threats. There's a lot of that. So when the client I have, the wife, went to her rent house with her young husband and his girlfriend, and she was just so enraged about all of it. She's screaming and yelling, and then they call the police, and then she's arrested, and that made it even worse, right? She's like, are you serious? They're in my house, and now I'm in jail? Yeah. So you shouldn't have gone over there and acted like that. So violence can also be the imminent threat of assault, of a contact, of a physical battery, and you need to just be quiet. So you're upset, you're still thinking. I said the first thing you do is try to see if you can talk to the person. If that's not a viable option, then you need to talk to your loved one's family counselor. In the interim, you need to not have any kind of violent interaction. So that is not just physical violence. It isn't violence just with your hands. It could be also, again, a vehicle or another weapon. And mostly also these death threats and verbal abuse. You need to just stop. Screaming and yelling and being violent isn't going to fix it. It just won't. And it's going to make it worse Because if you do get sued for divorce, right, like they're going to divorce you, and then they have witnesses, right? There you were screaming and yelling, and police reports with your name on it. Oh man, where you went over there and you threatened to kill them, and you committed violence on their property, and all this stuff where people go and they, I'm going to take all their clothes and put them on a fire and burn them. Okay, well, you destroyed their property. It's a crime. You're not supposed to do that. And now they have a record of it, and if you're arrested, it's really not helping you legally when you go to court, when you have either pending charges or former convictions or guilty pleas for this type of stuff against them, because they're going to go to court and say that they're divorcing you for these reasons, that it's not a supportable marriage. And if you go out and create a police record for yourself with them the victim, this is really not helpful. But people do it all the time, men and women. I understand emotionally, you just can't process it. Like, how could this happen? I trusted them, I believed them, we had the marriage, whether it was a big, elaborate, expensive thing, we went down to, the courthouse for a few dollars, but still, whatever, like, I agreed to this, and I believed in them at some level, and now, look at this. Now they treat me like this. They disrespect me, they hurt me, they cheat on me, they lie to me, they steal from me, whatever, and you're just so enraged. But you're not thinking clearly, because when you go create another criminal problem on top of your civil problem is your divorce lawsuit, right? Your criminal problem is if you go and you verbally assault or threaten to kill, terroristic threat, all this kind of stuff. You destroy their property. That's real popular. Their clothes. I'm going to key their car. All this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just incredibly poor decision making. And I understand you're mad, but take a pillow in your own place and beat that pillow up, or scream and jump around your own house, by yourself. There's things that you can do to kind of let the anger out. If you exercise, go beat a punching bag or something at the gym. But you going and destroying their property and threatening them in front of witnesses, and it's not going to help you. It's going to build a stronger case for them, and you don't want that, right? So first step you try to do determine whether or not you have reason to think that they really might file divorce, or you're just being imagination run wild. So you try to talk to them. Then you try to talk to other people that know and care about you, and or professionals who can try to give you some unbiased advice. And then you need to start being realistic, and you need to ensure there's zero violence on your part. None. That also means that you're not going and doing what we sort of commonly call pushing somebody's buttons. A lot of times what happens is the person who is in more emotional control knows that the person with less self-control is susceptible to taunts, things of that nature. So the person won't actually, threaten to kill the person or like physically harm them, but they'll just say things to them that they know they're going to hurt them so much that that person's going to react violently. And then the person will say, see, look, they're the ones that are horrible and I'm the victim. And it's a horrible, dangerous game to play. A lot of times if you put, gasoline on that fire and you think you're going to push somebody's buttons and they really are at their limit, even though it's not, their history, they've never done anything like it, they may react in a way that you absolutely did not anticipate. And now you have your own life at risk, or your children, or other family members. This happens all the time, right? Don't do this. It's just dangerous and it's incredibly stupid. So if you really think you're going to be sued for divorce, you weren't able to go to them and get a positive outcome, or they said, what, you're being silly. Oh, no, I was just having to work extra on that project that you knew all about, and that, oh, okay, of course I care about you. Let's go on vacation this weekend. If it really is something where it either is over or it probably could be over, start putting your professional hat on. And I understand you're hurt, and like I said, go, do whatever it is you need to, sleep a lot and beat up the pillow and go to the gym or whatever, but you need to not be self-destructive or destructive to other people. And don't taunt people. This is not the time. And a lot of times the blowback on that is just incredibly dangerous. And no one ever deserves it, but you're just not being rational when you think you can take somebody that has poor self-control and intentionally push them even further and think that you're not going to potentially be harmed. It's incredibly dangerous. And once you think that, okay, I'm either not gotten positive feedback from them, or it's a good potential that I may be sued for divorce, you need to start getting things together. One, you need to shut up. So we're not going to have any violence, right? We're not going to incite any violence. We're not going to try to push their buttons. But mostly you need to stop talking. There's nothing you're going to say is going to help. So just be quiet. And what that means is you need to start getting a record of how much you have This is where the records come into play, because people go to court for divorces, and they think that the judge or the lawyer or somebody magically is the one that's going to go through all your credit card bills and go through your house and figure out how much stuff you have and like who gets what. No, unless you want to pay them to do that, and judges aren't going to do that at all. But I guess if you want to pay, you want to pay somebody $300 an hour to go through your credit card bills and go through all the stuff in your house and figure out who gets that, grandpa's hammer and who gets grandma's pillow. If you want them to do that, I guess in theory some might, but it's an incredibly expensive bill, right? There's $300 an hour plus. It's going to cost you a ton of money. Most people don't have that money to spend on that, and if they do have it, they still don't want to waste it on something that's stupid. You have to go through your own stuff and come up with a list of what you have so that everybody can figure out who gets what under the rules. The divorce rules. That means exactly what it sounds like. What bank accounts exist, how much is in bank accounts, whose name is on them. I really caution you with money. When people get to the point where they feel like they're going to get divorced, usually there's a risk for fraud. And so if somebody's a co-signer on a bank account and they have the right to go in there and take funds, even though they weren't supposed to, they'll go clean it out and take all the money and leave the country with it, or, just do whatever they want with it. So you need to start being smart. So, take them off those accounts. If you can't do that, you need to go open other accounts with your money, and you need to have a list of all the credit cards. Don't misunderstand that when you get to court, if there's other secret credit cards in a lot of parts of the country, if you have what's a community property marriage, which basically means that any income that comes into your marriage after you're married is both of your income, even if only one of them earns it, and any debt that's incurred by either party is a debt of both of the parties. That's a huge thing you want to think about. So it's possible someone else had a secret credit card that you never knew about, but now you're getting divorced and you find out you're liable for, this $20,000 credit card that you weren't even aware of. So you need to, if you think you're getting divorced, right? So 1, you check to make sure, with them. 2, you've gotten the feedback, family, friends, people who care about you, and professional counseling. 3, you're not going to do any violence or incite any violence. 4, you're going to shut up because talking is not helping. And then 5, the most important thing, you need to get your house in order financially. So, what? Bank accounts, all your debts, that's all your utilities, your Netflix bill, $8, I don't care what it is. It needs to all be listed. And then your stuff, because you got to divide that stuff up. And again, nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to even have the inventory. So you got to make the inventory, and you got to start thinking through who gets what. I'm not mentioning in this episode children because it's such a tricky, thorny thing, but you have to remember basically with children, child custody, if the person is the parent of the children, then their rights to visitation and to be part of their children's life, it supersedes, it trumps your anger at them. So you chose to have children with them, then you're with them forever until that child, becomes an adult, and you're still going to both be parents. So you make that decision, it's for life. The divorce just ends the marriage. It's not going to end the parenting, and you can't, quote, ensure they never see that horrible person again. You can't legally do that. They have the right to see their child and then be judged on their own legal behavior of how they've interacted with their children. So you need to, again, get your records together for everything. You need to start doing your inventory. Divorces can be cheap and fast. It's not that complicated. You just literally just list the list of the stuff you have and how you're going to split it up, making sure that it follows the law in your area. If you don't have any children, or you do have children, if you can agree on who you're going to have, visitation, custody, and all this kind of stuff, who's going to pay for health insurance and braces and band fees and uniforms and dances. If you guys can agree on all that and it doesn't, it's not in violation of the law, then easy. Then all you have to do is file this paperwork saying that you're filing for divorce. You wait a certain amount of time. You go to court. If the other party agrees, they sign a piece of paper called a waiver. It says, I agree with everything. We're in total agreement. There's nothing to fight over or dispute. And then you go to court at the end of a certain kind of waiting time, and you have what's called a prove-up, where you go in front of a judge and basically just, hey, here's who I am. Here's why I'm qualified to file for divorce in this area because I've lived here a certain amount of time that's required. Here's when I was married. Here's when I, ceased to be living together because the marriage was no longer supportable. Here's all the things that we have. Here's all this way that we split all of our debts and all of our stuff. And then the judge will just sign it. There's no big, huge thing in this. It's not time-consuming at all. The problem is, of course, when you don't agree. And the further apart people are, meaning, like I said earlier, they were never friends, there's not really a bond, and they just sort of hate each other, then it becomes this big, huge battle, and people fight over everything, every little thing. Who gets that pillow? I don't know. Who got that fork? I'm not sure. who has to pay that $9 bill? I don't know. And they just fight and fight and fight. And when you can't decide, and you have to keep having hearings, and then the judge has to finally decide. It's a very time-consuming process. So I hope that some of this has been helpful. If you think you're about to be sued for divorce, on the practical side, you need to start getting all your paperwork together. You need to stop talking, and just start planning. And be realistic about what a lawyer can do. And hopefully you were wrong, and your happy marriage will continue on for all time. And if it is the right time to divorce, then be happy about that to the best of your ability, and move on and move forward and make a better life. It's not who you are as in total person. It was just part of your life, and we all are able to have a brighter tomorrow no matter what happens. So I thank you for joining me, and as always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information, including a link to our website for all legal services, which is at litigationmitigation.com. Thank you.